"Excuse me, this line is for first class only." A wealthy passenger dripping in diamonds looks down at a young black girl in a simple hoodie. The girl, Maya, is holding a valid ticket. The woman smirks. "People like you are ruining the exclusivity of air travel. I demand you be removed." But that woman has no idea who she is talking to. She's about to learn that the girl she just insulted is the daughter of the man who owns the entire airline, and the karma that's coming is as brutal and direct as a cancelled flight. The Astreas Reserve at JFK's Terminal 4 was not a lounge. It was a fortress of silence. It was designed to be the antithesis of a public airport. There was no beep, beep, beep of passing carts, no garbled gate announcements, no stressed families trying to wrangle toddlers. Here the only sounds were the soft clinking of real silverware on porcelain and the whisper of stockinged feet on thick, sound-dampening wool carpet. The walls were clad in slabs of grey-veined Carrara marble, and the lighting was a soft, warm glow designed to simulate a perpetual relaxing sunset. This was the holding area for the 1% of the 1%, and access was granted only by a $30,000 first-class residential ticket on Astreas Global. In a high-backed velvet armchair, half hidden by a towering bird of paradise plant, sat Maya Robertson. At 17, Maya existed in a comfortable state of near invisibility, and she preferred it that way. She wore a deep grey, slightly frayed NYU hoodie, a gift from her older brother, a pair of simple black leggings, and well-worn sneakers. Her glorious, coily hair was pulled back in a simple, practical bun. On her lap sat not a glowing new tablet, but a thick, dog-eared paperback, A Brief History of Time, by Stephen Hawking. She was lost in a chapter on event horizons, her brow furrowed in concentration. To anyone who bothered to look, she was just a kid who, by all appearances, had taken a very, very wrong turn past security. Across the expansive room, Caroline Fairchild was not invisible, nor did she ever intend to be. Caroline was a woman sculpted by entitlement. Her blonde hair was a helmet of expensive, unmoving perfection. Her face was tight, her lips permanently pursed in a state of mild disapproval. Her wrist was a battleground of clashing Cartier love and Juste un Clou bracelets, and they chimed with every dismissive wave of her hand. Her Birkin, 35 in a shade of eye-watering magenta, was placed on the adjacent seat, not on the floor. Never the floor. She was sipping a complimentary glass of Bollinger and glaring at her husband, Arthur Fairchild. Arthur was a man perpetually stressed. He was already balding, his face pale, and he hadn't looked up from his phone in 30 minutes. He was the CEO of Fairchild Logistics, a mid-level player desperately trying to break into the big leagues. "Arthur, did you hear me?" Caroline snapped, her voice a low hiss. "I heard, Caroline." "I'm busy," he muttered, scrolling through emails. "It's just... Look," she gestured vaguely with her chin toward Maya. "Standards. They're just gone. Utterly gone. This lounge used to mean something. It was exclusive. Now they're letting in... well, that." Arthur, without looking up, said, "She's probably the child of a diversity hire in corporate. It's some new family perks program. It's pathetic, but it's the world we live in. Now please, I'm trying to review the final pitch for the Astreas contract. This is a $500 million deal, Caroline. The least you can do is not bother me." Caroline sniffed. The contract. That's all he ever talked about. The contract with the mythical, elusive founder of Astreas Global, Marcus Robertson, a man no one ever saw, but whose power was absolute. He had built this airline from 3 small charter jets into the world's most exclusive carrier in under a decade. To be in business with Marcus Robertson was to be made. Caroline, however, cared less about the contract and more about the fact that her exclusive sanctuary had been breached. She watched Maya turn a page, her fingers smudging the cheap paper. Caroline felt a genuine physical sense of disgust. How had that girl even gotten past the private security checkpoint Maya, for her part, was entirely unaware of the scrutiny? She was simply reading Waiting to Board Flight AG001 to London to meet her father for a 2-week holiday. She was tired from midterms, and all she could think about was the flat-bed suite and the 7-hour sleep she was about to have. She checked the time on her simple digital watch. Boarding should be soon. She zipped her book into her worn JanSport backpack, a stark contrast to the Rimowa aluminum carry-ons gliding silently past her. She pulled the bag onto her shoulders and stood up, stretching her legs. Caroline watched this, her eyes narrowing. The girl was getting up. She was walking toward the boarding door where the first-class agent was just setting up the stanchion. "Oh no," Caroline whispered, her blood beginning to simmer. "She can't be." She grabbed her Birkin and her glass of champagne. "Arthur, come on. They're boarding." "It's not." "Fine," Arthur snapped, pocketing his phone and grabbing his briefcase. He knew that tone. Caroline was on the warpath, and it was just easier to follow. The gate agent, a young man named Thomas Powell, smiled nervously. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are now prepared to begin boarding for Astraeus Global Flight AG001 with non-stop residential service to London Heathrow." Maya was the first one at the line. She pulled out her phone, which held her digital boarding pass. Caroline and Arthur stepped into line directly behind her. The heavy, expensive scent of Caroline's perfume, Chanel No. 5, applied with a heavy hand, wafted over Maya, making her nose itch. Caroline leaned forward, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Excuse me, dear. I think you might be confused. This line is for first-class residential boarding only." Maya turned. She saw a woman who looked like a walking, talking jewelry advertisement glaring at her. Maya offered a small, polite smile. "Yes, I know. Thank you." She turned back toward the gate. Caroline's face tightened. The audacity. "I don't think you heard me," Caroline said, her voice louder now, sharp enough to cut glass. She physically stepped forward, placing a manicured hand on Maya's arm. "The Economy Plus line is over there, by the Starbucks. You need to move." Maya's smile faded. She looked down at the woman's hand on her arm, then back up at her face. The lounge was quiet, and several other passengers, a tech billionaire, a minor European royal, were now watching. "I'm in the right place," Maya said, her voice quiet but firm. "That's impossible." Caroline scoffed. She looked past Maya to the gate agent. "Mr. Powell, aren't you going to handle this?" "Thomas." Powell froze. He was new to the reserve, and his one and only job was to be visible, efficient, and above all, to never ever upset the Black Diamond members. He recognized Caroline Fairchild instantly. Her file was practically a novel of complaints, demands, and a list of her very specific, very expensive preferences. She was in short a terminal director's worst nightmare, but a nightmare who spent over $1 million a year with the airline. And she knew his name, a bad sign. "Mrs. Fairchild," Thomas began, his voice cracking slightly. "Good evening, Mr. Fairchild. We're just beginning the boarding process." "I am aware of the process, Thomas," Caroline snapped. "The process does not involve letting stray children from the food court wander into the first-class line." "This person," she gestured at Maya, is clearly lost. Or worse, she snuck in here. She needs to be removed. The other passengers were now openly staring. An elderly man in a Savile Row suit looked profoundly uncomfortable. Arthur Fairchild looked like he wanted the marble floor to swallow him whole. "Caroline!" Arthur hissed, grabbing her arm. "Leave it. Who cares? Let's just board." "I care, Arthur," she retorted, shaking him off. "This is a matter of security and principle. I pay an exorbitant amount of money for this service, this exclusivity, and I will not have it diluted by this." The "this" was clearly Maya, who stood rooted to the spot. Her face was flushing a deep, painful red. She could feel the stares of a dozen wealthy, powerful people. She felt small, exposed, and deeply, deeply humiliated. But her father, Marcus Robertson, had raised her with a spine of steel. "Ma'am?" Maya said, her voice shaking just a little, but her gaze level. "I am a ticketed passenger." "I am in the right line. You are holding up boarding for everyone." Caroline let out a sound that was half gasp, half laugh of pure disbelief. "Did you hear that she's talking back to me? Unbelievable." She turned her full venomous attention back to Thomas. "Thomas, I am ordering you to check her credentials. I am certain that ticket is a forgery, or she's an employee's child, trying to sneak into a cabin she hasn't paid for. Check it, now." Thomas was trapped. On one hand, he had a passenger who was clearly distressed. On the other, he had a Black Diamond member who could have him fired before the plane even pushed back from the gate. He chose the path of least resistance. "Miss, I'm so sorry," he stammered, avoiding Maya's eyes. "Company policy, I just need to see your boarding pass to verify it." "You already verified it when I entered the lounge," Maya said, her voice now cold. "I know, miss, I need to scan it again, for the manifest." It was a weak lie, and everyone knew it. With a deep, shaky breath, Maya held out her phone. The screen showed her boarding pass, Robertson Maya, Seat 1A, Zone 1. Caroline squinted at it, her lips curling. Robertson. What is she related to that new baggage handler, the one they hired last month? I knew it. An employee. This is absolutely unacceptable. They should be fired for this. "Caroline, shut up," Arthur whispered, his face now sheet white. He had seen the name on the pass, and a horrible, sickening premonition was dawning on him. Robertson. It couldn't be. It was a common name. It had to be. Thomas took the phone, his hand trembling. "Thank you, miss. I'll just be 1 second." He turned to his terminal and scanned the QR code. The system gave a soft affirmative ding. It's valid, Mrs. Fairchild," Thomas said, relief washing over him. "She is a confirmed passenger, in residential suite 1A. Caroline's face went from smug to thunderous. 1A, 1A. "That is the flagship suite. That is my suite. Ma'am, our records show you and Mr. Fairchild are in 2B and 2C. Thomas said, his confidence growing slightly. "This is an outrage," Caroline shrieked, her voice echoing in the marble hall. She obviously hacked the system. Or one of her friends in baggage claim did it for her. This is fraud. I am not moving. I am not getting on this plane until this hacker is arrested. Call Port Authority police. Call them right now. She was creating a full-blown scene. The other passengers were muttering. The tech billionaire sighed and put his headphones back on. Arthur Fairchild looked like he was going to have a heart attack. "Mrs. Fairchild, please," Thomas begged. "You are delaying an international departure. I am protecting this airline's integrity, something you clearly know nothing about." Maya just stood there, tears of pure rage and humiliation welling in her eyes. She wouldn't cry. She wouldn't give this horrible woman the satisfaction. She just wanted to go home, or at least to the metal tube that would take her to her father. "Scan it again," Caroline demanded. "I want to see you scan it again." "Ma'am, I really—" "Do it!" To placate her, and with a desperate, apologetic look at Maya, Thomas scanned the QR code again. This time, the system did not make a soft ding. It emitted a loud, piercing triple beep. Beep, beep, beep. Thomas's monitor, which was angled away from the passengers, flashed bright red. A massive modal window had popped up, overriding every other screen. Caroline Fairchild's face split into a triumphant, venomous grin. "Aha! See? I told you fraud, I knew it. Security. Someone call security." Thomas Powell wasn't listening. He was reading the words on his screen, and his blood had turned to ice water. The message in all caps, bold 30-point font read, "Thomas's mouth went dry. Gate agent failure. Code red incident." He looked up, his face ashen. He looked at Maya, then at the gloating, furious face of Caroline Fairchild. "Oh, God," Thomas whispered. "What is it?" Caroline demanded. "Did it tell you to call the police? Go on, call them." Before Thomas could utter another word, a new sound joined the drama. The sharp, rapid, and terrifyingly precise click, clack, click, clack of stiletto heels approaching on the marble floor at a near run. Janine Petrov, the terminal director for the Astreas Reserve, moved with the speed and lethal grace of a predator. She was a tall, imposing woman in her late 40s, always dressed in a severe, custom-tailored black suit. Her silvery blonde hair was pulled into a chignon, so tight it looked painful. An earpiece was curled discreetly into one ear. The code red alert had pinged her personal console, and she had crossed the lounge in under 30 seconds. The moment she rounded the corner and saw the scene, Thomas Powell white as a ghost, Caroline Fairchild red-faced and triumphant, and Maya Robertson standing small and defiant with tears glistening in her eyes, she understood everything. And she felt a cold dread she hadn't felt since a bomb threat in Dubai. "What?" she said, her voice not loud but carrying an icy authority that sliced through the tension. "Is the meaning of this delay? Mr. Powell?" Thomas flinched as if struck. "Ma'am, Mrs. Petrov, there was a discrepancy with the passenger." "A discrepancy?" Janine's eyes locked on Caroline Fairchild, who for the first time looked slightly uncertain. Janine Petrov was one of the few people on Earth who did not fear Carolyn. "This girl," Carolyn said, regaining her footing, "was trying to board with a fraudulent ticket. We caught her. I was just telling your agent to call the police." Janine ignored her completely. Her eyes softened as they landed on Maya. She took 2 quick steps forward, bypassing Caroline entirely, and stopped directly in front of the young woman. "Miss Robertson," Janine said, her voice suddenly warm, almost deferential. "My most profound apologies. I was not aware you were traveling with us today. Your father didn't notify us you were on the manifest." Maya, shocked at the sudden shift in tone, just wiped her eye with the sleeve of her hoodie. I just booked it last night. Midterms finished early. I wanted to surprise him." "Of course," Janine said, her eyes flashing with fury as she glanced at Thomas. "He will be delighted. You should never have been detained. Not for 1 second." She turned and her gaze on Thomas Powell was so cold it was a wonder he didn't freeze solid. "Mr. Powell, you will report to my office. Immediately. You will not finish this boarding. You will not touch another passenger's ticket. You will go to my office and wait for me." "Yes, ma'am," Thomas whispered, his career flashing before his eyes. He scurried away looking like a chastened child. Janine then turned to Caroline Fairchild. Caroline's smugness had evaporated, replaced by a dawning, sickening confusion. What is going on, Robertson? Why do you... Who is she? Mrs. Fairchild. Janine said, her voice dangerously level. "This passenger is, as her ticket clearly states, Miss Maya Robertson." "I know that." "What of it?" Caroline snapped, though her bravado was failing. Arthur Fairchild, meanwhile, was frantically typing Maya Robertson into his phone. The blood drained from his face as the search results populated. He saw photos from charity galas, from the opening of the new Astreus wing at SFO. Photos of a young, smiling Maya standing next to her father. Her tall, imposing, and legendarily powerful father. Marcus Robertson. "Oh no," Arthur breathed, stumbling back a step. "Caroline, stop. Just stop talking. Now." "What are you talking about, Arthur? This woman is..." "Caroline," Arthur yelled, his voice cracking with pure panic. "She's his daughter. She's Marcus Robertson's daughter." The entire lounge went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the thick wool carpet. Caroline Fairchild's perfectly painted mouth fell open. Her eyes darted from her husband's terrified face to Janine's cold, furious one, and finally to Maya, who was just standing there looking exhausted. "Robertson, as in the Marcus Robertson," Caroline whispered. The name felt like ash in her mouth. "Yes," Janine said, her voice clipped. "The founder, owner, and CEO of this airline. The man who signs your membership card. The man whose daughter you just accused of fraud and publicly humiliated." Caroline's body began to tremble. It started in her hands, her Cartier bracelets rattling softly. I didn't know. She's dressed in... I thought... "You thought what, Mrs. Fairchild?" Janine pressed, taking a step closer. "That because she is a young black woman in a hoodie, she couldn't possibly belong here, that she must be a thief. Is that the standard you were referring to?" "No, I was just concerned about security," Caroline stammered, her face a mask of pale horror. "You were concerned about your own prejudice," Janine stated, as if it were a weather report. "You have caused a code red incident. You have harassed a member of our owner's family, and you have delayed an international flight." Janine turned her back on Caroline, a dismissal so profound it was like a physical blow. "Miss Robertson," she said gently to Maya, "please, allow me to escort you to your suite." It's okay," Maya whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I can go." "I insist," Janine offered her arm. "Your father would have my resignation if I let you walk one more step alone after this." Maya nodded, too tired to argue. She let Janine Petrov personally guide her down the pristine jet bridge, leaving the rest of the passengers to board. Caroline Fairchild remained frozen, her face ashen. The other passengers filed past her, their expressions a mixture of pity-disgust and poorly concealed schadenfreude. Arthur Fairchild was leaning against a marble pillar, his head in his hands, repeatedly whispering, "We're ruined. We're ruined. You just cost us everything." "Arthur," Caroline said, her voice a reedy whisper. "Arthur, we have to fix this. I'll apologize to her on the plane." "Don't you go near her." Arthur snarled, his eyes blazing with a fury she'd never seen. "Don't you look at her. Don't you breathe in her direction. You have just destroyed my company, my life." He pushed past her and stormed down the jet bridge, not even waiting to see if she followed. Caroline, alone and trembling, finally picked up her Birkin bag from the floor, where she'd dropped it, and for the first time in her life walked to her seat not as a queen, but as a pariah. The first-class residential cabin on the Astraeus Global 707X was less an airline cabin and more a series of small private hotel rooms. Each of the 12 suites had a floor-to-ceiling wall and a sliding door for complete privacy, a full-length ottoman that converted into a bed, a 32-inch television, and a personal minibar. Maya was in Suite 1A, at the very front of the cabin. Janine Petrov had personally stowed her backpack, handed her a bottle of chilled sparkling water, and motioned to the lead flight attendant, Sarah Jenkins. "Sarah," Janine said, her voice low and urgent. "This is Miss Robertson. She is to be disturbed for nothing, unless she specifically requests it. She is our only priority on this flight." "Do you understand?" Sarah, a consummate professional, had already received the alert on her own console. "Yes, Director. Absolutely. Miss Robertson," she said, turning to Maya with a warm, genuine smile. "It is a pleasure to have you with us. Please, if you need anything, a meal, a drink, the temperature adjusted, you just use the chat function on your screen, and I will be here instantly. Otherwise, we will let you rest." "Thank you," Maya said, her voice small. I just want to sleep." "Of course." Janine gave Maya one last sympathetic look. "Have a safe flight, Miss Robertson. Your father is aware of the incident. He will be handling it." Maya just nodded, a fresh wave of exhaustion hitting her. The door slid shut with a soft, satisfying thud. She was finally alone. She kicked off her sneakers, curled up on the wide leather seat, and pulled the plush cashmere blanket up to her chin. Only then, in the safety and silence of her expensive cocoon, did she let the tears come. They weren't tears of sadness, but of pure white-hot rage and humiliation. She hated this. She hated the assumptions people made. She hated that her simple, comfortable hoodie was seen as a costume of poverty or a sign she didn't belong. She hated that her father's wealth, which she had never asked for, had become a shield she was forced to use against a world that judged her on sight. She cried for 10 minutes, then wiping her face with a hot towel she put on the noise-cancelling headphones, selected a mindless action movie and willed the world to go away. A few rows back, the atmosphere was arctic. Caroline and Arthur Fairchild were in 2B and 2C adjacent suites across the aisle from each other. But there was no privacy. Arthur had left his door open and was standing in the aisle hissing at his wife. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he whispered, his voice shaking with venom. "Arthur, it was a mistake, an honest mistake. How was I supposed to know?" She was dressed like a vagrant. She was dressed like a college student, Caroline, and you with your prejudice couldn't see past it, Marcus Robertson, the one man in this city and the world I needed to impress, the man holding the $500 million contract that would have saved our company from the brink. And you called his daughter a thief. Saved the company. Caroline's blood ran cold. "What do you mean, saved? I thought we were doing fine." "Fine?" Arthur laughed, a short, barking sound of pure despair. I've been leveraged to the hilt for 2 years. That deal with the Chinese suppliers fell through. I needed this Astreus contract. It wasn't just a bonus, Caroline. It was a lifeline. And you didn't just sever it. You poured gasoline on it and lit a match. Caroline felt dizzy. I'll fix it. I'll go up there right now. I'll apologize. I'll buy her something. Buy her something? Arthur looked at her as if she were insane. Her father owns the airline. He can buy her a country. You can't buy your way out of this. You just showed the most powerful self-made black man in logistics that you are a vile, entitled racist. You didn't just insult his daughter, you insulted him, his entire life's work, his legacy. Then, what do we do? She whispered, the reality of her actions finally crashing down on her. You do nothing. Arthur ordered. You sit there. You don't press the call button. You don't order champagne. You don't breathe. You just pray that he takes his anger out on you and leaves my company alone. But I doubt it. Men like Robertson didn't get where they are by being merciful. He slumped into his own seat and slammed his privacy door shut, leaving Caroline utterly alone in her suite. For the first time, Caroline realized the flight attendants were actively avoiding her. Her pre-departure champagne never came. No one came to take her dinner order. When she pressed the call button, it was ignored. After 20 minutes, she pressed it again. Finally, Sarah Jenkins appeared, her face a mask of cold professional disinterest. Yes, Mrs. Fairchild. I never received my champagne, Caroline said, her voice faltering. My apologies, Sarah said, her tone flat. We were prioritizing another passenger. Is there something you need? I'd like my dinner, the caviar service, and a bottle of the Sancerre. Of course. Sarah returned, not with the delicate mother-of-pearl spoon and blinis, but with a simple tray. It was the economy class meal. A piece of dry chicken, some overcooked green beans, and a foil-topped roll. What is this? Caroline was horrified. My apologies, Mrs. Fairchild. We seem to have misplaced the manifest for the first-class residential meals for your suite. This was all we could find. This is an outrage. It is, Sarah agreed, her eyes empty of any sympathy. But it's all we have. Will there be anything else? Caroline looked at the pathetic meal, then at the closed door of Suite 1A. She knew that behind that door, Maya Robertson was being served whatever she wanted. The message was clear. She had been downgraded, not in seat, but in status. She was a non-person. She shoved the tray away, her stomach churning. The next 6 hours stretched before her like a prison sentence. She was trapped at 35,000 feet, flying toward a reckoning she had created, all while her husband, her company, and her entire social standing went into a nosedive. The flight was for Maya blissfully uneventful. She slept for 5 straight hours, waking only as the cabin lights slowly brightened to simulate a sunrise, signaling their descent into London. She felt refreshed, the incident at the gate fading to a dull, angry bruise. She splashed her face with water in the private lavatory, brushed her teeth, and changed into a fresh t-shirt. She was just ready to see her dad. For Caroline Fairchild, it was 6 hours of unmitigated hell. She didn't eat. She didn't sleep. She just stared at the blank television screen, her mind racing. Every scenario ended in ruin. Arthur hadn't emerged from his suite. The silence from across the aisle was more damning than any argument. When the plane touched down smoothly at Heathrow, The fasten seatbelt sign chimed off. Sarah's voice came over the PA. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to London Heathrow. We ask that all passengers remain seated. We will be deplaning in a very specific order this morning. Please wait until your row is called." This was new. Astraeus always had an all-clear deplaning for its residential cabin. A moment later, Maya's personal screen chimed. A chat message from Sarah. "Miss Robertson, please take your time. We will hold the cabin until you are ready, and your father is waiting for you at the jet bridge." Maya smiled, her heart lifting. "Dad's here." She grabbed her backpack, slung it over her shoulder, and opened her door. The aisle was empty. All the other passengers were still in their suites, doors closed. Sarah was standing at the front galley, smiling warmly. "This way, Miss Robertson. Have a wonderful holiday with your father." "Thank you, Sarah, for everything." Maya walked out of the aircraft and into the sterile brightness of the jet bridge. And there he was. Marcus Robertson was a man who commanded any room he entered. He was tall, 6'4", and wore a bespoke dark grey suit with a casualness that suggested it was his daily uniform. He was not a man who smiled often in public, but the moment he saw his daughter, his entire face lit up. "There's my girl," he boomed, pulling her into a massive hug that lifted her off the ground. "Hi, Dad." Maya mumbled into his shoulder, feeling safe for the first time in 24 hours. He set her down but kept his arm around her. "You okay? I got Janine's report. I am so sorry that happened to you, baby." "I'm fine, Dad. Really. It was just one horrible woman." "Yes," Marcus said, his smile fading as he looked past her back toward the plane's door. "One horrible woman." Behind Marcus, Maya noticed two other men. One was the Astraeus LHR station manager, looking nervous. The other was a stern-looking man in a UK Border Force uniform. "What's going on?" Maya asked. "Just tying up a loose end," Marcus said. "You go on with David, the station manager. He'll walk you through the diplomatic channel. No customs. The car's waiting." "But what about you? I'll be right behind you. I just need to have a word with a few of our valued passengers." Maya, knowing that look in her father's eyes, nodded. She gave him another quick hug and walked off with the station manager. Marcus Robertson turned his full attention back to the aircraft door. He nodded to Sarah, who was standing just inside. "Mrs. Fairchild, Mr. Fairchild, you may deplane now." Arthur Fairchild came out first, his face glistening with a sick, cold sweat. He saw Marcus Robertson and froze. "Mr. Robertson, sir, I... Before he could continue, Caroline emerged behind him. She saw Marcus, and her entire body went rigid. She'd seen him in magazines at galas. The legend. And he was looking at her with an expression of such pure, cold disappointment that it stopped her heart. "Mr. Fairchild," Marcus said, his voice a low, pleasant rumble that held a core of absolute authority. "Sir." "Mr. Robertson." "It's an honor," Arthur stammered, fumbling to offer a handshake. Marcus looked at the proffered hand, then at Arthur's face and then back at the hand. He did not take it. "Mr. Fairchild," Marcus began. "I was just at our London headquarters this morning reviewing the quarterly contract bids. Yours was on my desk. Fairchild Logistics. A $500 million bid for our entire European ground transport contract. A very ambitious bid." Arthur's heart hammered. A shred of hope. Yes, sir. We believe our efficiency metrics they're unbeatable." We're very excited about the potential partnership. Were you? Marcus tilted his head. That's a shame. Because as of 20 minutes ago, that bid has been permanently rejected. Arthur's knees buckled. What? No, please, sir. It was the most competitive bid. Our numbers. Your numbers were fine. Marcus interrupted, his voice hardening. But Astraeus Global is not just about numbers. It is a brand. It is a promise. It is a promise of respect, service, and dignity. We are a family, and you— He turned his gaze to Caroline, who visibly flinched. Do not share our values. Miss Robertson, please, Arthur begged. This was my wife. It was a misunderstanding. She had no idea. She had no idea my daughter was my daughter. Marcus cut him off. So if she had been anyone else's daughter, it would have been acceptable. If she had been a scholarship student who had saved for years for that ticket, it would have been fine to accuse her of fraud, to demand her arrest, to publicly humiliate a 17-year-old girl based on— What? Her hoodie, her hair. No, Caroline found her voice. I was concerned about security. Mrs. Fairchild, Marcus said, and for the first time his voice rose. I have the full high-definition audio and video from the reserve lounge. I have the transcript of you calling my daughter stray, a vagrant, and a hacker. You were not concerned. You were hateful. You were elitist, and you were racist. He said the word, and it hung in the air like a toxin. You brought your ugliness into my house, Marcus continued, gesturing to the plane. You upset my child, and you embarrassed my staff. Please, Caroline whispered, tears now streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. It will never happen again. I am so sorry. You are right, Marcus said. It will never happen again. Because you, Mrs. Fairchild, are hereby permanently banned from Astraeus Global. Your black diamond status is revoked. Your name is now on our no-fly list, alongside terrorists and registered felons. If you attempt to book a flight or even enter one of our lounges, you will be arrested for trespassing. This for Caroline was a fate worse than death. It was a social execution. And you, Mr. Fairchild, Marcus said, turning back to the broken man. Your contract is denied. Furthermore, I will be making a personal call to the Board of Consolidated Freight. I hear they're your primary creditors. I'm sure they'd be interested to learn that your company's $500 million lifeline just evaporated due to your wife's public conduct. No, Arthur shouted. You can't. That's my entire company. You'll bankrupt me. You bankrupted yourself, Marcus said, his voice flat. You stood by and let it happen. You let her do it. You are as complicit as she is. Now, get out of my terminal. He gestured to the border force officer who stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Fairchild, this way, please. You'll be using the General Customs Hall. Arthur and Caroline, their faces pale and streaked with tears, were escorted away, not through the private diplomatic channel, but toward the long, winding, and very public queues they had spent their entire lives paying to avoid. Marcus Robertson watched them go, his face impassive. He adjusted his suit cuff, turned, and walked toward his daughter. The Karma delivered the debt paid in full. The walk through the General Customs Hall at Heathrow was for Caroline and Arthur Fairchild, a descent into a special kind of hell. They, who had always been whisked through private channels by handlers, were now crammed into the all-other passports line, surrounded by crying babies, stressed families, and backpackers. Caroline was sobbing a hysterical gulping sound that earned her annoyed looks. Arthur was silent, his face a grey mask of absolute ruin. You. Caroline sputtered at him. You let him do this. You didn't defend me. You didn't do anything. Arthur turned to her, his eyes dead. Defend you. Defend you. You just detonated our lives, Caroline. I'm not ruined. I'm atomized, consolidated. Freight holds the note on our house, on the cars, on everything. When Marcus Robertson makes that call, they will call that note. We'll be bankrupt by Friday. No, he wouldn't. It's just business. He can't. He can. And he will. Arthur hissed, his voice low and dangerous. Men like Marcus Robertson don't make idle threats. He didn't build a global empire by being nice. He built it by being decisive. You just gave him a reason to be decisive all over our lives. You poked a dragon, Caroline. And you did it while holding his most prized possession. They stood in silence for 45 minutes. When they finally reached the customs agent, the man looked at their passports, typed something and frowned. Mr. and Mrs. Fairchild. Yes, Arthur said wearily. It seems your expedited screening status has been revoked. I'm going to have to ask you to step this way. We'll need to conduct a full search of your luggage. What? Caroline shrieked. This is harassment. It's procedure, ma'am, the agent said, his voice bored. He had clearly gotten an alert. They were led to a sterile back room, where for the next 2 hours they were forced to watch as agents unpacked every last thing. Every silk dress, every bespoke suit, every bottle of expensive cream was removed, inspected, and unceremoniously dumped on a stainless steel table. They were treated not as VIPs, but as suspects. By the time they were released into the arrivals hall, they were hollowed out. Their luggage was a mess, their dignity was gone. And then the phone calls started. Arthur's phone buzzed. It was his COO. He answered it. Arthur. Thank God, what the hell is going on? We just got a notification from Astreas. The contract's dead. And, Arthur, I just got off the phone with a lawyer from Consolidated Freight. They're calling an emergency board meeting. They're calling our loan. All of it. They said something about a catastrophic reputation risk clause. What did you do, Arthur? Arthur sank onto a hard plastic airport bench, the phone slipping from his hand. It was done. It was already done. Marcus Robertson hadn't even waited for his car to reach the city. Caroline's phone pinged. It was an email. The subject, membership revocation. Astreas Global Black Diamond. Then another. It was an alert from the New York Post. A gossip column. Her eyes scanned the headline. Socialite shocker. Caroline F. Banned for life from Astreas Global after racist attack on CEO's daughter. How did they know? She whispered, horrified. He told them, Arthur said, his voice hollow. Or Janine Petrov did. He didn't just ban you, Caroline. He publicized it. He's making an example of you. You're not just banned. You're a pariah, a social leper. Caroline's world spun. The committees she chaired, the galas she ran, the friends who defined her existence. It was all over. No one would associate with her. She was toxic. She wasn't just poor. She was far worse in her world, cancelled. The full weight of her actions. The casual cruelty. The thoughtless prejudice. The automatic assumption that a black girl in a hoodie couldn't possibly belong crashed down on her. She had built her entire identity on a foundation of status and exclusivity, and with a few hateful words, she had given the king of that world a reason to demolish it. She had insulted the girl boarding first class, unaware her dad owned the jet, and her dad had in return repossessed her entire life. The heavy soundproof door of the Bentley Mulsanne closed with a soft pneumatic thud. The chaotic din of the Heathrow arrivals hall vanished, replaced by a silence so profound it felt like a sanctuary. The air inside was cool and smelled of fresh cream-colored leather and polished walnut. For Maya, it was the most familiar and comforting smell in the world. It was the smell of safety. It was the smell of her father. David, her father's long-time London driver, had already placed a silver thermos and a porcelain mug in her armrest. She poured the steaming hot chocolate, wrapping her hands around the mug. The adrenaline from the confrontation was finally ebbing, leaving a shaky, hollow feeling behind. Marcus Robertson slid in beside her, his long-limbed frame folding effortlessly into the seat. He wasn't angry. Maya had seen him angry, and it was a terrifying, cold inferno. This was different. This was the calm, methodical precision of a man who had just identified a problem and was now simply solving it. "David, take the long way," Marcus said, his voice calm. "Through Hyde Park. No rush." As the car glided silently away from the curb, Marcus didn't console his daughter. Not yet. He tapped a button on the gleaming center console, a secure line. He waited. 1 ring. 2. "Michael," he said, his voice a low, pleasant baritone. "Marcus Robertson. I hope I'm not catching you in the middle of your morning round." He listened for a moment, a faint, unsmiling smirk playing on his lips. "Good. Listen, I'm just giving you a courtesy call. As of right now, Astreus Global is formally terminating our bid review for the European ground transport contract, the one from Fairchild Logistics." Maya's head snapped up. She watched her father. "That's correct," Marcus continued, his voice perfectly level. "The $500 million contract. No, the numbers were adequate. Let's call it a catastrophic failure of corporate character. It seems the Fairchild brand, well, it doesn't align with our company's core values. In fact, it's a significant public relations liability." He listened again, nodding. "Exactly. It seems Mrs. Fairchild, acting as a public representative of her husband's brand, engaged in let's call it a profoundly inappropriate public incident, on my flagship flight, no less. Involved harassment of a minor. Overt prejudice. The kind of thing that doesn't just make headlines, Michael. It makes shareholders nervous. Yes. I imagine it will be all over the Post by lunch." This was the kill stroke. "Here's the thing," Marcus said, leaning back into the leather. "I know you're his primary creditor. I know for a fact that Fairchild was leveraging our potential contract to secure his next round of financing from you. He's overextended. He's desperate. And I'm telling you as a friend that his $500 million lifeline is gone. He's insolvent. He's a bad bet, Michael. And worse, he's toxic." Maya watched her stomach twisting. This wasn't just karma. This was a corporate execution. "You have that reputational risk clause in your loan agreements, don't you?" Marcus asked, though it wasn't a question. "I'd be looking at that very, very closely if I were you. You'll want to insulate your own shareholders from the stain of being associated with that kind of public behavior. I'm just giving you a heads up before the markets open." He paused. "Of course, Michael. Always a pleasure to keep our partners informed. Talk soon." He ended the call. The silence that filled the car was heavier this time. Maya finally found her voice. It was small, barely a whisper. "Dad, was that Mr. Fairchild's banker?" "His primary creditor," Marcus corrected, gently turning his full attention to her. The CEO was gone. Dad was back. You just bankrupted him, didn't you?" Marcus didn't deny it. "I gave his creditor the unvarnished truth. Michael Sterling at Consolidated Freight doesn't care about ethics, but he's terrified of a bad balance sheet and a PR scandal. Fairchild's company was a house of cards. I just removed the cut that was holding it all up. But she was the one, Dad. Mrs. Fairchild. She was the one who did it. Was it right to destroy his whole company? To take away his everything?" Marcus looked at his daughter, his eyes soft but serious. He saw her goodness, her empathy. He was proud of it, but he also knew it was a vulnerability he had to protect. "Maya," he said, taking her hand. His was warm, strong. "Answer me this. What did Arthur Fairchild do when his wife put her hands on you? When she called you a stray? When she demanded your arrest in front of a lounge full of people?" Maya thought back, the humiliation washing over her again. He told her to be quiet. Once, he said she was bothering him. "Exactly," Marcus said, his voice hardening just a fraction. "He didn't defend you. He didn't tell her she was wrong. He didn't see a young girl being harassed and step in to protect her. He saw his wife causing a scene that might inconvenience him. He was silent. He was complicit. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. Then when he found out who you were, he turned white. He wasn't afraid for you, baby. He was afraid of me. And Maya, you listened to me. A man who is only respectful when he's afraid of the consequences is not a good man. He's a coward. His respect is just fear in a suit. And I do not ever put cowards in charge of $500 million of my company's assets." He settled back in his seat, his point made. "What happens when a real crisis hits, when a shipment is hijacked or a union strikes? Does he do the right thing, or does he hide? He showed me his character today. He failed the test." Maya nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand. It wasn't just revenge. It was a reckoning. "And it's not just about him," Marcus continued, his voice quieter. "It's about Thomas, the gate agent. A young man, probably working his way through school, and that woman threatened his entire livelihood, terrified him just for a thrill. It's about Sarah, the flight attendant, and every other crew member who has had to smile and say, 'Of course, Mrs. Fairchild,' while being treated like dirt. I didn't just punish her, Maya. I liberated my entire staff from her. I sent a message to every single employee at Astraeus Global, from the baggage handlers to the pilots. We have your back. This house is clean." He looked out the window as they passed the green expanse of Hyde Park. "And I did it for the next girl," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The one who isn't my daughter. The brilliant young engineer from Atlanta who saved for 2 years to buy that ticket. The one who walks in wearing her university hoodie and just wants to read her book. What happens when Caroline Fairchild sees her? Does she get arrested? Does she get thrown off the plane, humiliated with no one to call for help?" "No," Marcus said, his voice now iron. "Not in my house. Not on my plains. That woman is a virus, Maya. A virus of entitlement and prejudice. You don't warn a virus. You eradicate it. You make an example so powerful that the next person who even thinks about acting that way thinks twice. He finally turned back to her, all the hardness gone, leaving only the fierce protective love of a father. I've spent 30 years building this baby. 30 years of people telling me I didn't belong in the room, that I was articulate, that I was lucky. 30 years of smiling at men like Arthur Fairchild, while they dismissed me right up until the moment they realized I was the one signing the checks. I didn't build this empire just to buy nice cars and big houses. I built it so I could make the rules. And in my world, the rules are simple. We treat everyone with dignity. The pilot, the passenger, the janitor, the CEO, everyone. She broke the one unbreakable rule. She brought that old, ugly, hateful world into my world, and she did it by trying to tear down you. He let out a long breath, the last of the tension leaving him. I can't make the whole world fair, Maya. I wish I could, but I can and I will control my world. And in my world, actions have real, permanent and hard consequences. It's not just karma, it's policy. Maya was silent for a long time, watching the city glide by. She looked at the strong, capable hands of her father. She understood. He was a builder, but he was also a protector. He hadn't just delivered a punishment. He had reinforced the walls of the fortress he'd built to keep her and people like her safe. She finally leaned her head against his shoulder, the hot chocolate in her hands finally cooling. "Okay, Dad," she whispered. "I get it." Marcus's entire demeanor shifted. The CEO was gone. The billionaire was gone. Dad was back. He kissed the top of her head. "Good," he said, his voice warm again. "Because I am done with policy for the day. Now, I am thinking dinner. The Ledbury. They have that white truffle risotto you like. And tomorrow, I cleared my schedule. We're going to Greenwich. You can explain that whole event horizon thing to me again. I'm still not sure I get it." Maya smiled, the last of the incident's chill melting away. "It's a brief history of time, Dad, and you're not slow." "Maybe not," he chuckled, tapping the privacy divider. "David, let's take the scenic route past the palace. My daughter and I want to see the city." As the Bentley purred silently through the streets of London, Maya looked out the window, finally feeling safe, and for the first time truly understanding the protective weight and absolute power of the name she carried. And that's what happens when prejudice meets power. Caroline Fairchild learned the hard way that the very status she worshipped could be taken away in an instant. She didn't just lose her membership. She lost her company, her social standing, and her entire identity. All because she couldn't see past a young woman's hoodie. This story is a powerful reminder that what you say and who you say it to matters. The world is smaller than you think, and the quiet girl in the corner might just be the one who owns the building. Hard karma is real, and it always finds its target. What did you think of Marcus Robertson's response? Was it too much, or was it exactly the hard karma Caroline deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories where the arrogant get what's coming to them, make sure to hit that like button. Share this video with a friend who loves a good karma story. And please, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new video.